The front page of the People Daily, Ruto to Uhuru, State House is not about tribe. As you can see right there, this of course, these utterances made over the weekend during Mama Mudavadi's funeral. Deputy President uncharacteristically answers his boss, saying he voted for his policies and aspirations, not the region he comes from, and that 2022 is about ideology. Of course, this, the rejoinder to what the president had said during that particular funeral. Or was it? That's a question very many people are asking, but you can find that story on page 6 of your People Daily this morning. Also the PD, confessions of son who killed family. Inspired by a wretched movie, 22-year-old tells police how he planned to wipe out his whole family 3 times because they did not like him. That's a shocking story, of course, and you can find it on page 4 of your People Daily therein. And as children get into second week of education, of course, learning institutions just trying to grapple with dealing with learning in COVID-19 times, education bosses face sack over school desks. This can be found on page 8 of your People Daily therein, of the details as to why some schools, even at this particular point in time, don't have desks and the prerequisite chairs to go with what they're trying to do in terms of social distancing within these learning institutions. That story is on page 8 of your People Daily this morning. Front page of the Standard now, Uhuru DP clash, battle lines drawn. In the past, it was Ruto's allies who took the battle to Jubilee's top leadership, but yesterday it was the DP who tackled the president head-on over his Saturday remarks, completing their fallout. Then Uhuru's allies hit back. As you can see there, their respective leaders and their lieutenants, of course, talking about what is going on so far. Statement from the president, and I'll quote right there. You can find it in your copy of your Standard. If that being the dynasty narrative is the thinking or logic, then I can also stand and say that it is only 2 communities that have ruled Kenya, and maybe it's time to give others to rule. Kenya has many communities. This can be found in your copy of your Standard, but also on the front page of your Standard, a quote from Dr. William Ruto: "We cannot degenerate from where we are. When we supported President Uhuru Kenyatta, it was not because of his tribe, but his agenda and programs that promised to transform this nation." You can find it, of course, as well in detail, because this clearly is the big political story. As you can look right across your dailies, you can find all the details right there. Front page of your Star now. Let's look at what we have right there. After Uhuru, where do we go to next as far as that's concerned? Succession race shapes up, centered on President Kenyatta's apparent political divorce from Deputy President William Ruto after the head of state's declaration that the presidency is not a preserve of only 2 communities. The list of politicians he is likely to back for country's top job has narrowed down. And as you can see there, this could be some of those who might get that particular political backing. As you can see right there, Kalonzo Musyoka, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, Senator Gideon Moi. We also have ODM leader Raila Odinga, who has made utterances to the effect that he's still not out of the political race. You can find that, of course, as well in the copy of your Daily Nation this morning. That story is on page 7. As you look at that as well, keeping nursing mothers in school, special meals and bathrooms. This is a story that you can find on the back page of your Daily Nation, of course, even as the Education Ministry gave the directive that even those girls who got pregnant during that particular break should be allowed back in schools. How do you deal with them? Because theirs is a very special case, even when it comes to matters nutrition and taking care of them. That story is on the back page of your Daily Nation. You can get all the details of that right there. Let's look at what we have now. This is your Star. Ruto tells Uhuru to stop blackmail. President said it's time to support candidate outside Mount Kenya and Kalenjin community. That story is on page 6 of your Star. You can get all the details of that therein, of course. As you look at that also, driver survives as bus plunges into the sea at Likoni Channel. This, of course, happening yesterday. The video of this actually went viral as well. And you can see right there the rescue attempt taking place, of course, right there. And, of course, this is on the front page of your Star, all the details of that therein. And finally, look at the front page of the Business Daily as you get into that. Company registrations surge on COVID job cuts. As you can see right there, new business listings hit a record high of 65,783 in search for glory in entrepreneurship. Of course, coming hand in hand with massive job cuts right across the country and probably necessitating for that particular move for some of them to get into business. That's a story you can find in your copy of the Business Daily, and all the details are therein. So that's what you're waking up to as far as your dailies are concerned right here. But also you're looking at the by-elections right across across the country, and this wheelbarrow factor that has just thrown the political landscape into a spin. Welcome to K24 this morning. Welcome back, of course. Let me get to my panel as we jump into this particular discussion. In studio, we have public policy analyst Arnold Maliba. Good morning.
Morning, Jeff.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Asante sana, thanks for making time. We also have Gloria Oruoba, youth policy analyst and expert on matters youth as well. Good morning, Gloria.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I haven't seen you this year.
You know, you've been talking so much. I thought you'd been on the show.
No?
And I've been seeing a lot of you. You've been very busy, even when you're not in studio.
Very
clearly,
busy, yeah?
clearly. You've been on the ground, working hard.
Thank you for having me.
Asante sana. And Happy New Year. Thanks for making time to be on the show. Thank you so much. Also, in studio, Hesbon Owila, political and media communications expert. Good morning, Hesbon.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Asante Nisana. Let's start off with this elephant in the room because it's making the front page of every daily right now as it stands. President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking, and some people saying just shooting from the hip on this one, talking about the fact that probably this needs to go beyond two tribes on this particular issue, two communities. What's your assessment of that particular statement, Gloria, from where you stood when you heard that utterance from the president?
You know, I think our president is very, very frustrated. I think truly he believes in the Building Bridges initiative, and he truly had intent to actually see it through. And you know, we started last year with the pandemic, and there was a lot of dynamics within the political arena. And you know, the president really tried to push this unity thing, and I think he's getting to a point where there's a realization, especially after Irungu Kangata's letter. I think he's getting to a point where he realizes it's going to be a difficult sell. So what you see is a man who's actually very frustrated, and it was a bit unfortunate that being a symbol of unity, he actually was pushed to a point where he actually is now dividing this country, you know, by bringing in the tribal lines, by bringing in, and you know, Jeff, the more I listened to the speech yesterday and just his demeanor and body language, I feel as though, you know, it's really been a challenge trying to keep his deputy, William Ruto, out of this campaign mode, out of trying to, you know, gain the ground. And, you know, when all fails, when you look at all the political narratives, when all fails, at the end of the day, the last thing that anyone, you know, grasps to, it's the tribal line. And this is what we saw in his speech. Because talking about, you know, not only two tribes can lead this nation. We never voted President Kenyatta because of his tribe. And not only that, when we were actually pushing, I was part of the people pushing for, you know, when we had the NRM movement and we resist because this, we were not voting for Raila Odinga because of his tribe. I come from, I'm Kisii. I was not voting Raila Odinga because he's closer to home. So I think, to me, that is a sign of frustration and a sign of giving up. There's nothing more to use to fight this, your deputy, William Ruto. And so therefore, the easiest and laziest approach is the tribal cut. Because of course, we know William Ruto is actually Kalenjin.
Why is he fighting his deputy then?
Not fighting. I think it's the frustration of the idea. Remember, William Ruto was not really open in embracing the Building Bridges initiative. He was critical about it. And, you know, that is supposed to be his legacy. Remember, Kenyatta is he's really trying to, you know, exit in a good way, exit in a way that he can be remembered for something. Because as it is, the Big Four agenda was sort of, nobody really even understands what that was about. So I think this was his final attempt of really trying to, you know, exit the stage and leave something and be remembered for something. And the fact that William Ruto was critical about certain issues that were being included in the Building Bridges initiative, of course, the pushback appeared as if they were, you know, fighting. So I think Uhuru Kenyatta is very frustrated because he's starting to understand that he might be remembered for not much.
Hesbon, let me come to you very quickly on this one as it stands at this particular point, because we're looking at it from a scenario where, as the president wound up his speech during that particular funeral, he said that he's in charge, he won't be told what to do, he knows what he's doing. Are you confident with that, that even from where he stands, He's not showed us all the cards. There's still some that he has to play, and most Kenyans might be shocked from where he moves from here.
Well, I don't think Kenyans will be shocked. I think we've been in this political space for some time, and there are things that we understand better. The key message that I got from what the president said in Vihiga County was not really a frustration or an affront on anyone. I mean, if you look at it from a discourse analysis point of view and the entire communication climate within which the president was addressing himself, you realize that he was actually responding to people who seem to be hell-bent on, carrying the tribal card. The conversations from the speakers who had spoken before the president basically were insinuating the fact that they support BBI, but then you'd realize that all of them were retreating to their tribal groupings. Some saying that, the Luhya nation must stick together. Some saying that you cannot unite Luhyas if other Luhyas are in ODM, others are in KANU. And you see, that kind of a conversation evokes the politics of tribe. And I think it's lazy thinking when we want to run away from the tribal politics to class politics. It's not even just lazy, it's also dangerous. Because as a Luo, I don't think anyone would have a problem with me being a Luo if I articulate issues that are nationalistic. But when it comes to class, I think it becomes problematic because when someone identifies you as someone who is privileged economically and they are not, I think we have that conversation where they'll start asking themselves, the reason why I'm not privileged is because the people who are privileged stole from me. And that is the danger of this class thing, the hustler narrative thing. But I would say that the statement by the president in itself was essentially rallying Kenyans to run away from this balkanization and tribal cards that we've been part and parcel of in our politics. He did not say that it is now time for a non-Kikuyu or non-Kalenjin to take power, or he will support someone from outside these two different communities. He basically reiterated the fact that it is dangerous when we start a class kind of agonistically toned political campaign, because then it can degenerate to other people saying that these tribes have ruled, this religion has ruled, and therefore it is time for this other sector of the society, which I think is the most prudent thing to do for all of us. That leadership has nothing to do with class, leadership has nothing to do with who your father was, leadership has nothing to do with your tribe. Leadership is about your track record, your integrity, content of character, and basically the how and why you're going to present the manifesto that you have and how it is going to change the lives of Kenyans. And when we run away from that, I think all the leaders who are presenting themselves for 2022 will be looked at against very credible things besides tribe.
But Hesbon, what I want to ask you very quickly before I get to Arnold is the fact that even when you talk about the dynasty versus hustler narrative, when you take that further, it's just talking about the massive inequality that's seen in the country. And that clearly is an issue that any leader who is in office or will get into office needs to address. So when people say it's dangerous to talk about it, why is that? Because clearly there's a problem in there with how the resources have been shared across the country.
You see, I agree with you. I mean, the mass inequality is a reality. I mean, the gap between the rich and the poor in Kenya is a reality, and we cannot run away from that. But leadership is not about reminding people that you're poor, and therefore you need to rally around me. Leadership is about telling people that these are the things that I will do in this country to address the issues of poverty, to address the issues of the plight who are marginalized in the society. It is not a question of telling them that now we need to rally around. By the way, if it was a question of bringing everyone who drives borders, who sells mboga outside there, then I think this party that is associated with the hustler nation would be having border candidates, would be having mama mboga candidates. They don't have. Leadership is about conversations on how we are going to address these issues. Okay. And we cannot drum up, rally people around their plight to say that because you are poor, then I'm one of you, you need to vote for me. No, just tell them how you're going to address their plight. It's Arnold, as simple as that.
Okay, let me get to Arnold on this one, because clearly this hustler dynasty narrative started a while back. Of course, let's not even forget there's a time Raila Odinga tried to explain how they were all hustlers and their fathers as well were hustlers. That his father and Uhuru Kenyatta's father as well were hustlers. So there are no dynasties here. What's your take on the key issue that is being addressed? How else do we have it so that it doesn't cause what seems to be probably down the line, it takes another angle?
You know, first of all, Jeff, before I respond to that, I was actually chuckling as I listened to both of them actually speak and do politics the very clever way, running away from the issues and trying to slide around. Whereas Gloria said she didn't vote for Raila because he's probably a closer neighbor or because she comes from Nyanza or something. She didn't say why she voted for him. She only said she did not vote for him because of tribe. On the other side, I can actually see him.
I can say why I voted for him later.
He's also talking about, as in, if you look at, we shouldn't talk about this issue around inequalities and stuff. Again, saying that leadership is not about such and such. But then probably just to address that, John C. Maxwell says that everything, and I want to actually include, everything including inequality, everything including hustlers, poverty, dynasties, and everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So there are not going to be issues where we exclude from this conversation. And again, I'm also laughing when he says that that the president was responding to a few people who had come up and spoken on that platform. The president wasn't responding. If there is any place where the law of cause and effect works effectively, is actually in politics. If you honestly are honest, you will realize that this debate had begun a week earlier on social media. It actually had been pushed online with the trends going on. First of all, it started with an anti-William campaign, talking about Killiam, talking about a number of stuff. And then it ended up with a quote. I don't know whether it's truly spoken by the Meru governor, who said that Kenya is not a volleyball team where two clans actually keep on changing volleys, and he was actually referring to the Kikuyus and Kalenjins. So when the president then stands up, when the nation has already been marinated in an online campaign around this issue, and then he responds, and then you think that is spontaneous. It wasn't spontaneous. There's something to it that had started earlier, and that was just an opportunity where the president had to respond. And even if you look at how he's actually saying, he says that if that is the logic, if that is the reasoning, then I can also stand here. You know, when somebody actually abuses you by telling you, you know, I can call you a donkey, but I will not. He already has. So when the president goes out and says, I can also stand here and say, no, all of you have forgotten that particular bit of where he said, I can also stand here and say, and gotten to what he really wanted to say. But be that as it may, fact of the matter is this, that there is massive inequality in this country. Fact of the matter is that tribe still and largely informs our politics. One of the reasons, by the way, why we vote the way we do is primarily because of politics. Our mobilizing philosophy, our politicians are lazy thinkers. We don't talk about issues. That is why for the first time, when we are confronted with an issue about inequality, we want to run away and reintroduce tribe, which is actually the safest mode. Because what the president said, these two know, and everybody else knows out there, that is something that so many people have spoken about, that this Kenya is not meant for two tribes. Those are common conversations that we've had out there. But when the president is going back to that particular conversation, for purposes of running away from an issue, you know, we might not love the hustlers versus the dynasties narrative, right? But isn't it an issue? Isn't it true that there is a huge divide between the rich and the poor? Isn't it true that, and but even if when we speak about, even if we're going to speak about tribe, that we are going to have a rotational presidency and everything else, we are a country that is afraid to confront itself. We look at ourselves in the mirror and we cry, na tunasema huyo sio mimi. That is the moment we are in as a nation. That number one, we are tribal. We don't want to face that. Even when we vote specifically because we are voting for somebody because he is either our tribe or a friendly tribe or something like that, or one of our kingpin, our tribal kingpin is allied to that particular person, we still want to run away and say we are voting for that particular person because of issues. In this country, people decide whom to vote for, and the reasons to vote for that person come later. A person in Mount Kenya is likely to decide to vote for a Mount Kenya candidate way before that person has got reasons why they are voting for that particular person. Same thing will happen with Western and Nyanza. People decide they are going to vote for so-and-so because, first of all, he is their son. That is the reason. Then when you ask them, and we have got a platform like this, where people have to actually substantiate and qualify why they are saying or doing what they are doing, then people will come up with the reasons later on. Ordinarily, reasons why I'm supporting Gloria should come first. And then she fits in. We give this narrative, normally we give this analogy, that we first of all get the cloth, and then whoever fits in. If Oliver or Gloria fits in, then that is the person we give. But in this country, you get a person like myself. Then you try to put him, to give him clothes like yours. So you realize that I'll be struggling to put on. The same thing we do with politics. So that said, we should not run away. For the first time, we are confronted with issues that politics will be decided on issues. There is nothing dangerous with saying that there is inequality. It is. People are spending money lavishly and others are sleeping on the streets. There is nothing wrong with saying that there are people who honestly have got money they cannot explain, and there are others who work hard and they make nothing. There is entirely nothing facing a nation and telling the nation that, by the way, this is where we are. For the first time, by the way, Jeff, we are at a place where issues are in an election and we are trying to run away from those issues.
Gloria? Jeff, come to you.
I'm glad that he's brought it up, by the way. I'm glad he's brought up why I voted for Raila Odinga
very quickly
last
on
time.
that one.
Yeah. I voted for him because at that time he was the symbol that we were looking for as the youth. We were looking for someone who was going to bring us to the table and actually put us into power so that we could be part of the policy and the governance of this country. Remember at that time, Raila Odinga actually had the ground because he was resonating with the people. He was actually speaking on behalf of the voiceless. He was a representative of the underdog communities. He actually understood what the poor and the hustlers, those hustlers that we are now talking about, he understood what they were going through, and he appeared to have a manifesto that was going to include all these people into government. So I voted for him believing that, and that hasn't changed. Because if you look at the person that I tend to be inclined upon, it's the same thing. We're looking for people who are going to be able to speak on behalf of the underdog communities of this country, who are able to actually bring the hustlers to the table. So the only difference is that ever since Raila Odinga took the handshake and started telling doctors to, it's not that serious, you people can't be threatening us, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly, he moved from being that symbol of hope into being, the government that we think is not representing us. So that is why I voted for Raila Odinga then. That is why I went to the streets with the NRM. That is why I threw away my Safaricom SIM card. That is why I was passionately in the cause, because I saw this is actually how the youth are going to get into power. But when you talk about hustlers, and when you hear Raila Odinga say that he was a hustler, I agree. Because being a hustler is not being poor. Being a hustler means, against all odds, you wake up in the morning and you look with the resources that you have and you ask yourself, how am I going to make a living? How am I going to put food into my stomach? And so you go out there and you work hard. So if you ask me, when I go to a bank and I look at a bank teller sitting there and, doing their administrative whatever role, that is a hustler. They woke up in the morning, despite all the challenges that they're facing, they actually went to the bank, they dealt with whatever they're dealing. And that's why Kenyans are still in the same position. The only difference is now the symbol of hope that they seem to think resonates with them is not the people that we had, in 2007 and the other years. And so, having said that, I really truly believe that when someone says the economic split that you're trying to take us through is dangerous, I don't think so. I think that is the realization that we need people like Murathe to understand that some of us actually wake up to fight for another day. So that economic thing that was being brought to the table by the hustlers, that dynasty versus system, dynasty versus hustler, whatever that conversation is about, really boils down to the economy of this country and how, at this moment, it benefits a certain few. The COVID billionaires, remember, the 5 people who sit in committees and decide who they are giving tenders to. And that's what we are trying to say, that come 2022, we want to bring the hustlers, and the hustlers here means those who are not in the inner circle who control policy, governance, and because we know there is an inner circle.
We'll be getting to a break, and after the break, I'll be getting to Hesbon's reaction on what Dad said. But very quickly, when we say that now we're looking for somebody new who's a symbol of hope,
yes.
30 seconds, Gloria, because the person who's fronting as the hustler champion is currently still the deputy president of
The
the country.
chief hustler.
So how
Yes.
does he divorce himself from the fact that the government that he's trying to rescue the hustlers from
But he
is
does-
a government where he's number
He
two?
does not even need to divorce himself when you have the president going on a platform like the funeral that we have and actually spew out remarks that are targeted at his deputy. So he doesn't, Uhuru Kenyatta is actually doing that job very easily. He doesn't need to divorce himself when he's openly not invited into state functions. He doesn't need to divorce himself when he's actually subjected to sitting through Bomas. I was in Bomas when people were actually, they even started throwing those Building Bridges initiative books towards the deputy president. William Ruto doesn't need to do any of that because it is very clear that one, Uhuru Kenyatta is running the show by himself. It's very clear that even through his political allegiances, when you see Irungu Kangata writing letters and saying, Uhuru Kenyatta is inaccessible.
Okay,
Nobody can
particular
actually
point.
reach him. So he's running the show alone, and William Ruto doesn't need to come out and say, hey, I'm not part of it, because we can see that he is not part of it.
Take a short break. When you come back after the break, of course, stage being set as we have different by-elections right across the country. What happens in Nairobi County as well, as far as that election is concerned. We discuss that and plenty more. You can also get me on Twitter, by the way, at I am Jeff Mote or K24 TV. Back after a short break. Don't go too far.